The first week I worked for Joe Biden, I remember writing something, maybe it was a speech or something, and I had a line in there. I'm certain I was trying to impress him with how smart I am, and I wrote something like a cadre of concerned citizens, and I sent it off to him afterwards, and there was a red line through that, and he wrote group of people. I learned connection isn't about trying to impress people, right? About what you know. It's about trying to understand. It's about speaking to them in a way that connects to their emotions and to their heart.
Welcome back to the Expect Chaos podcast. This is episode 5, and we are very fortunate this week to welcome our first guest. We had a conversation with Margaret Aitken, who is a communications consultant and writer who has spent her life thinking about how words shape us, steady us, and guide us through moments of challenge and change. She began her career in government, eventually serving as press secretary for then Senator Joe Biden, and went on to found her own communications firm where she works with executives to help find language and develop messaging that feels authentic and impactful. Most recently, she created a Substack, a quieter and more personal space where she writes candidly about grief, grace, connection, and the everyday magic woven through life. We really enjoyed our conversation with Margaret and hope you will too, where we really dive into the power of words, her career, and her trajectory. So again, we hope you enjoy it. And thank you again for joining us for this episode. Without further ado, our chat with Margaret Aitken.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi.
I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. I want to just apologize out of the gate. I know you promoted me in the last one, and I had a work issue come up, and then when I was listening to you guys, I was like, oh no. So I apologize for that. And
we were that bad.
Oh God.
Joe,
I was
funny,
like,
we didn't mention you by name, so you just called yourself out. We appreciate you though.
That did not allay my guilt, but I appreciate that too. Yeah.
Oh man.
It's like, tell me you grew up Catholic without telling me.
Yeah. 100%.
Oh my goodness. It's funny because we had that episode sort of in the can, or at least a concept of it. You know, just these things happen, and I don't know, we were really just disjointed. So it's you're probably sitting there thinking, you know what, they really needed me in that episode.
No. It was great.
That's where the guilt came from. You're like, oh no.
No.
They're a mess. They need some help over there.
Not at all.
We are so excited though to have you as our first guest. So Expect Chaos podcast. And as somebody who grew up in a family with 8 kids and someone who's had a career in politics, I was like, Margaret's going to feel right at home here.
Yeah. Chaos is where I do well. I exist in chaos.
I feel like there does need to be some sort of Venn diagram of people with like chaotic, and it could be good chaos, but chaotic upbringing, including large families who go into politics. I feel like it would probably just be two circles over top of each other.
It's interesting to think about that. Like, I've never really thought about it that way, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure a calm childhood necessarily is conducive to going into politics, but I'd be interested to talk to someone who felt like they had one and ended up in politics. So
yeah, I think it just probably you're just so used to being in that chaotic environment, which was all politics, right? There's so much upheaval, and every day's a different day, and especially in campaign work and stuff. So yeah, it probably does prepare you pretty well.
And I feel like if you're, especially growing up in a big, so I'm one of 7, you're one of 8, you end up being a bit of an armchair psychologist and a hostage negotiator. And like you have a bunch of personas that you needed to navigate childhood, whether it was your parents or your siblings. And so those skills also come in handy in the political world, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest thing was like, so I was youngest. My parents had 8 kids in 10 and a half years. So there was just a lot of volume, and it was always loud and chaotic and funny and not funny and fighting and all of this stuff. And I think for me, being the youngest, what it taught me was really about like, if I needed to get my parents' attention, and if I had it, I needed to be like super clear, very concise, and very compelling about what I was asking for, right? So I think that really informed a lot of what I ended up doing in my like future life. But just that like, oh, the iron's hot, so I need to strike, and I need to be really clear, and I need to be super compelling to get their attention and keep it. So maybe.
So is that what brought you to your love of words? Because I think that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today is the power of words, how it helps people understand and connect with ideas and other people and through politics and in other areas. So is that, do you feel like that's sort of where you started to develop that love of using words to, advance ideas or connect to different people and things and topics?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I remember being a kid, like standing in like the front of the classroom and somebody was reading the preamble of the Constitution and I started to cry. Like I literally thought it was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever heard. And I just like, and not even related to like politics, but just so beautiful. And I think throughout my life, I've been really, really drawn to people who have that ability to connect people through words, like, take some really obscure or difficult to understand, complicated subject and like really narrow it down to something that connects with someone's heart. So I think probably that is the reason that I kind of got into working in politics, working for elected officials, because they have to do that. Successful ones have to do it. They have to take a war halfway around the world and make it relevant to the guy who works at a grocery store in Ellesmere, right? Like, so it's constantly what they're thinking about, sort of taking these things and making them relevant to people. And I think I've always been in awe of people who have the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm. So take us back a little bit. So you're in high school when you were a kid. Did you want to get into politics? Was that something you had thought about, or did you have a different dream at that time?
No, I didn't come from a family that discussed politics at all. I mean, at the table, nowhere. I mean, we just didn't. Like, we didn't come from a really political family. Ironically, our next door neighbor was Ted Kaufman, who was Joe Biden's chief of staff for years and years and years, and then, of course, became senator himself, and just a lovely, lovely human being. But my family didn't grow up when that, like, I loved reading. I loved writing. I wanted to be an English major in college, and I remember my dad saying to me, "So you're gonna teach?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think so." And he was like,
"What else are you gonna
then
do?"
What are you gonna do? And I really didn't know. But when people come to me now and say, "Oh, I'm an English major," I'm like, "Great," because I just think that there's so many opportunities. I think the ability, one, to be able to, like, English is a lot of reading, to be able to consume a lot of stuff, make sense of it, and then turn that into something, the writing element to it. I mean, I have seen so many people who are like really, really brilliant people. I mean, I worked for a guy with 2 degrees from Harvard and, Penn, and like he hated writing. So I think having that ability to, connect that way and take really complicated information and write it for someone, I think it will serve people well. So it's interesting. People are always discouraging people from going into like English as a major, and I'm like, go, great. Like, whatever you do, you're going to benefit from being able to communicate well. So yeah, it was nothing I was ever really interested in. I actually literally just fell into it. I was working for Delaware Today magazine when I was out of college, and I wasn't a staff writer. I was like a stringer. So they would pay me to do certain stories, and it was great. I mean, I couldn't believe I was making money by writing, but it was a monthly magazine and I was making like $200 a story. So it wasn't like anything that I could do as a career. So I, had interviewed somebody for the county, and they were looking for somebody to kind of help them with this, to help them with doing some communication around a grant that they had gotten. And I did that for a year. And then while I was there, their press secretary left. And I remember at the time the county executive said to me, like, "Do you want to do this job?" And I had no idea what it entailed. And I actually just automatically said yes, and then immediately regretted it. And like went away, and I was like spent half a day thinking, how can I get out of it? And then I'm like, maybe I should just try it, and I had a bunch of friends that I had known that were reporters, and but it was a great place to start because, there's a lot of intense issues in local government, but a lot of it is also ribbon cuttings and things. So there was some high stakes stuff and there was some low stakes stuff, and I could make some mistakes and learn. And, John Carney was there.
It's so wild, and this is very Delaware focus, so apologies for anyone outside of Delaware. But that greenhouse administration has the amount of people that came out of there who went on to be just really all across Delaware government and made significant changes and have
100%.
legacies in their own right. And I had a chance to talk to him. I was like, I don't think you get credit for all the amazing people that you collected in your administration. I mean, you, Elaine, Bill Bowser, like there's so many awesome
Sean
people.
Garvin, DENREC secretary, John Carney,
Sean,
like governor. Yeah. I mean, it was I was super lucky because I was super young and I just, I felt like I was in graduate school, and I really took the opportunity to ask a lot of questions when I didn't understand something. I asked questions. I'll just tell this story. Ann Farley was my immediate boss, and she's been around forever, and she is so smart. And I handed her the first press release I ever wrote, and I think in my lifetime I've probably written 10,000, but this was the first. And I handed it to her, and she read it, and she looked at me, and she said, "Is this a joke?" And I said, yeah, it is. I took it back.
She is so blunt like that. I mean, it's very effective.
She's
like, what?
She's wonderful. I took it back and I went to a friend of mine who was a reporter, and I was like, what did I do wrong? And he was like helping me. And so, I mean, I tell everybody, like, when you're at those new first jobs, just look at it as an opportunity to learn, like be a sponge, like take in everything. And when you make a mistake, figure out what you did wrong and ask the experts and redo it. And like, so I just had this really phenomenal experience of being around some incredibly impressive, intelligent people who were also very giving. And when I would come to them and be like, explain this budget process to me, they would take the time to do it. So it was really great.
That's awesome.
Is this a joke? I feel like we've all been there. We've all had is this a joke moment?
We're like,
is this
not sure how to answer that.
I said yes. I was like, yes, it sure is.
Yeah, I feel like you've had a really
Thanks for getting
week.
it. Thanks for getting the joke.
Early April Fools. There you go.
I feel like I'll be back.
We'll have the real one in a few hours. Don't worry.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So where did you go from there? I mean, like you said, it's county government. It's I think a lot of people now, because of Parks and Rec, have a little bit more of a preview of county government. But you then went on I went to
the state after that. So I was the first public information officer for the State Department of Education, which was, again, a stretch for me. I'm a Catholic school girl, right? And speaking on behalf of the public school system. And I loved it, and I had, again, just an amazing group of people, and we were right across from Legislative Hall, and I learned, it was like a whole other language that I was learning, and I did that for a year and a half, and then I got a call from a person that I knew was working for then Senator Biden, and she said, we're looking for a Delaware press secretary, and do you want to come up and interview? And I did. And I was so naive at this point. Like, honestly, I went through 3 or 4 interviews. And then the last interview was with Joe Biden himself. And I didn't really realize at that time that when you get to that stage, it's like, unless it's like a horrific experience, it's your job. So I went in and I could hear him. He was on the phone and he was like in a heated discussion about Afghanistan. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I hope he doesn't ask me about Afghanistan. Like, what am I going to say? I literally was like, I'm going to make a joke and say, oh, I have an Afghanistan on my couch and it's super warm, or something like that. That was just like completely unrelated. But we just had a lovely conversation. And during the conversation, he said to me, do you want me to call at the time it was the Secretary of Education, to tell her that you're coming over? And I was like, no, I'll do it. And then I remember driving home and calling my parents and saying, I think I took the job. Like, I was so naive. And then again, I had regrets. And I remember calling Senator Kaufman, who was not a senator at the time, and he was no longer a chief of staff for Joe Biden. And he was kind enough to have a discussion with me. And he said, what's your hesitation? And I said, look, Mr. Kaufman, which is what I called him at the time. I've only been there a year and a half at the Department of Education, and I'm finally able to answer a question from a reporter without saying, "Let me call you back." And I said, "I'm comfortable there." And he stopped me and he said, "Margaret," he said, "comfortable is good at my age. It's not good at your age." And I thought, like, it was such great advice for me. I think I was 28 years old, and he's like, "You don't want to be comfortable now. You want to grow now. You want to learn now." And that kind of changed my life. And then I, kind of went in and I worked for Joe Biden for 10 years. And I was his Delaware press secretary for like a year or so. And then after that, the national press secretary. And it was probably the most formative experience of my life, my adult professional life.
It is amazing to realize that kind of, at least for me in my life, all of the most amazing opportunities were totally unexpected and had that combination of excitement and nausea.
Yeah. Yes.
I was like, I'm excited, but I also feel like I'm going to throw up. Like, is that what it feels like?
Yeah. And I think the key is working through the nausea, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just fear. Like, it's just fear. It's just like, am I going to know how to do this? Am I going to be, and I think Ted hit the nail on the head. Like, comfortable isn't great when you're in your 20s. You're not supposed to be comfortable. You're supposed to be stretching and learning and doing all the stuff that scares you. And I honestly think, had I not had that conversation with him, I might have just stayed where I was, which was great, but I don't think it would have led me to where I am. And I think I would have lost a lot of experiences, and it would have all been because of fear.
Yeah. And so you've had the opportunity to work with a lot of people at very high levels. What has that shown you about what they fear, especially as somebody who it's a pretty intimate process writing for someone else and translating who they are into words that actually are supposed to move people and as you said earlier, make them feel something or feel bought into something. How have you maybe seen even yourself in these world leaders or, these people with degrees from, very fancy places?
Yeah, I think so. They're all really different, and I approach every single person that I've worked for different. I think like you guys are really experienced in communication, and communication is only effective if it's authentic, right? So like a big part of what we do is getting to know the person and how they speak and what's important to them. And it's just it's a matter of like trial and error. Like the first week I worked for Joe Biden, I remember writing something, maybe it was a speech or something, and I had a line in there. I'm certain I was trying to impress him with how smart I am, and I wrote something like a cadre of concerned citizens, and I sent it off to him afterwards, and there was a red line through that, and he wrote group of people. And like I learned, like, connection isn't about like trying to impress people, right? About what you know. It's about trying to understand. It's about speaking to them in a way that connects to their emotions and to their heart. And Joe Biden was so good at both clarity and connection. Like, I think he, more than anybody, love him, hate him, he has that ability. Like, they talk about his empathy. What empathy is connection. And he had that ability to do that, not only individually, which he's pretty famous for, but for a group. Ted Kaufman talks about this. They did this poll one time, and it was asking people of Delaware, do you have a personal connection with Joe Biden? And the number of people that said yes was like 80%. Like, there's no possibility that many people could have had a personal connection with him. But I think they answered that way because they felt that way. And they felt that way because he had that ability. Like, he was such a great listener, and he was such a great communicator, and he communicated to people from their hearts. Like, you've seen how, they call him like the empathizer in chief or whatever. He has that ability to make you feel like, I understand what you're saying, I hear what you're saying, and then I'm responding to it. Not just I'm waiting to talk to you or trying to impress you or telling you what I'm doing, but I'm answering what you've shared with me. And like I learned so much from that, and writing from him was all about trying to make that connection, like, and there was a lot of ways that he did it through poetry, namely Irish poems. He did it through telling stories about his family that were deeply personal to him, and people could connect and understand. When he told a story about his sister and growing up and what it was like to go to Catholic school, people could connect with that. So a lot of his writing was very personal, very, very personal. Like he injected a lot of his own experiences and families and mistakes that he had made and things that he had learned from other people. So like for him, it was very much that way. For other leaders I worked for, there's not a comfortability with that. Like I often use this as sort of an example. A couple years ago, I was working for this company and I'd worked for their CEO for years doing communication for him, and he got another job and they put the COO in his spot. And the COO was a much more like process oriented guy. The guy that I had worked for, he was a much more like heart focused person. And I made the biggest mistake. Like I knew that the company was going to be feeling a lot of turmoil when this guy was leaving, and there was like a lot of upheaval. And we all know that the only antidote to that really is communication. And I started writing what these people needed to hear, right? Like in his opening speech. And he delivered it and I watched and it was flat. And the reason it was flat is because I was using the old guy's words, right? Like I wasn't, I didn't do what I should have done, which was write like the COO speaks, you know, which is very different. He's not going to talk about his family or personal experiences or make the same kind of connection that this old guy did. So I think like in the work that I do and the work that you guys do, it's all about like trying to hit that authentic chord and making sure that you are responding to the needs of that individual company, that individual client, and you are capturing their voice accurately.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an interesting experience seeing, at least from somewhat of a distance, President Biden or Senator Biden at the time, where you do feel like when you're in the room with him, you're getting the full person, right? A whole human kind of experience around him. And he is communicating from the heart. And then there are a lot of people out there who, as you alluded to, sort of put up this wall between whatever they're trying to present publicly versus, who they are fundamentally as a person. And that's kind of fascinating. What do you think contributes to that sort of feeling? And, what do you think people could learn from a Joe Biden in that way?
So it's a great question. And I think for me, what comes up is like, some people are very uncomfortable with vulnerability and sharing some of the more personal pieces. It does tie you to the rest of the audience, but it's a very, very vulnerable thing. And some people aren't comfortable with it. So I think, the willingness to kind of step out there and make yourself vulnerable, I think is a big piece of it. And some people don't have that comfortability or level of like self-assurance that they can do it. And it's not natural or authentic to them. So, I would never encourage like that COO that I was talking about. Like it's not how he speaks. It's not where he's comfortable with, and he's never going to get to that place. Now, that doesn't mean he can't connect with the audience. He just has to figure out a different way to do it. Right. And I think the different way to do that is the people that don't have that like heart connection, the personal connection, they can connect your meaning, personal meaning, to the public purpose, right? So they can talk on more on like a different level. They can talk about what the company does and why it matters and what your relationship with a company means to that purpose. So there's ways around it. And like, I do think it really does have to be authentic, and it has to be something people are comfortable with. Because when people aren't comfortable with that, you can feel it. Like you can. And so I think you have to kind of meet people where they are. You can lead them in certain directions, because there are people that I work with now that I'm like, okay, I think you can lean a little bit more into this space. And you can get them to go in certain directions, but it needs to feel authentic, and they need to be comfortable with that vulnerability piece of it.
Yeah. It sounds like, though, what you're saying, the point you raised about listening to the audience, regardless of the style with which you do it, it does have to make people feel seen. They have to see themselves in the conversation, whether that's through a personal story or saying you are vital to the company through a systems focus. But it sounds like a unifying thread is it has to make people see themselves in the conversation, and that the speaker sees them and sees what they're bringing to whatever endeavor we're talking about, whether that's being like a good citizen because this is an elected official, or a worker saying my CEO gets me.
Yeah. So one of the things that when I work with CEOs of companies or presidents of companies, like I always use this analogy, and there's the story of the blind men and the elephant, right? Like, so there's 6 men that come up and they can't see the elephant, so they grab a different piece of the elephant, and one grabs the ear and it was like, oh, the elephant's like a fan. And then somebody grabs the tail and he's like, nope, the elephant's like a rope. And then somebody grabs the trunk and it was like, or the side of the elephant. It's like a wall. And what a CEO or a president of a company has to do, they have to describe the whole elephant, right? Because everybody that works for them, they just have want that one piece. If you are working in a health system and you are patient focused, that's what you're focusing on. You're not focusing on the finance piece of it or the HR piece of it or the government affairs piece of it. So the leader has to be able to do that, like describe the elephant, not only describe the elephant, but your piece in it too, and why it's a part of the whole. So like I use that analogy a lot because I think it's a really important for them to kind of step back and say, like, every single person that is there, they work for you and they have a different job and they have a different perspective, and you're the unifying piece. So when you speak, you got to speak to all of them, and you've got to make all of them feel relevant, and how the person who's doing the patient facing work is going to impact the company. And same with the person in purchasing, like. So I think that's the piece of it that I think leaders, it's really important for them to see that their job is to be clear, but also to offer perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy. So thinking about your role in that, and I think we've all been there in these sort of high stakes, high pressure situations. I've found myself at times running into writer's block and creativity block when it comes time to put the words on the page and hopefully craft a story or something that's compelling enough to connect and do all of the things, describe the elephant as it were. What is your process for moving through some of those things? I mean, do you run into writer's block? I shouldn't assume that you do. I certainly do, and I think a lot of people out there do. But other types of what is your creative process? How do you stay inspired to really put life into the words that you use and craft?
So I think for me, I just have to keep drilling down until I get to a piece that feels true and authentic and compelling to me. And I mean, a lot of times it's through asking question after question after question after question to get to the place where I feel like, I mean, there's times when I'm talking to a client and I'm like, okay. And I keep asking and keep asking. And then I get to the moment and I'm like, okay. Like, I'll give you guys an example. I have a friend, and this is a really kind of a micro, she runs a very small company, but she's a good friend of mine, and our kids used to be like play together and stuff. So I've known her for years, and she started this company that was sort of like an Uber for kids. And it was a little bit of a different concept. It's not a stranger picking you up. They work for her, and she wanted me to look over her business plan and offer some advice for their materials and communication stuff. And it was good. I mean, I looked at it and it was good. And so I started asking her, it was good. And I started asking her some questions, but I didn't feel that, like, that thing you're talking about, Matt. Like, I was, okay, it's good. I like it, and we can play around with this a little bit, but I felt like there was something missing. So I kept asking her a question. I was like, why did you start this business? And then the first answer was, oh, because there's this market niche, and she's got like all of this, she clearly went to business school, and she's giving me all of this information that makes sense to me. And then I'm like, but why did you start this business? And then she started in more of like, kind of some stuff about her and what she was doing with her career trajectory. And then I'm like, and why did you start this business? Like, there's a million businesses you could have started. And I knew the answer to this, but I wanted to get her there. This woman has 7 kids, right? Like, she has 7 children. And I kept taking her there, and she wasn't going there. And she said, because I'm tired of asking for favors I know I'm never going to be able to repay. And she's like, I don't have enough bandwidth to get my kids where they need to go all the time. And I want to make sure they're safe. And I want to be able to trust that person. And like, she started talking, and I'm like, okay, like, so we start like recreating her story around that narrative. And I was like, look, if I am presented with 2 companies, and one is like this great, private equity backed company that looks beautiful and they got a great website and they're doing the same thing that you're doing. And then I got you over here, and I'm a mom and I can relate to your story. Like, I think a million times I'm like, I feel guilty, and I'm praying to God that they don't want to do a meeting at 3:30 because that's when pickup is. And like, I'm going with you because I can trust you and I know that you understand. So some of the time, like, the block is in that we just haven't yet found the really compelling piece to it. The piece that, what gets me super, super excited is the piece that makes me feel like you see me, I see you, and there's a human heart connection to it. So I guess the answer to that question is I just keep digging until I get there. Yeah. And I don't think there's been a time that we haven't really been able to get there with any client. Like, it's not always as simple as that one. It's maybe more complicated, but you can get there. You can get to a place where I think block comes when you don't feel excited about or engaged with what you're writing about.
Yeah, absolutely. It sort of gives the picture of a block of marble, and you sort of see the statue in there, but you haven't quite chipped away at the layers yet. So you take the chisel and you keep hammering away until you end up with a masterpiece at the end of it. So that's sort of the visual that
that I'm
getting.
Absolutely.
So writing for others is one thing for sure, in other people's voices. Writing for yourself, is at least, again, in my experience, an entirely different and for me a lot more challenging. You have embarked on this journey recently of releasing some writing on your own behalf and writing in your voice, and quite frankly, it's beautiful, and we're both enjoying all of it. But what brought you to that point, moving from you're still obviously crafting words for others and helping others put voice to the ideas that they want to, put out in the world. But now you're putting some of your own ideas out in the world. So what brought you to releasing some of your own writing? What are the differences you feel from giving voice to others to giving voice to things that you've been thinking a lot about?
So this is a story. So for my whole life, I've always written for other people, and have literally felt like unbelievably blessed to be able to do that. Like, I'm not joking. Like, sometimes I'm like, God, I can't believe this. People pay me to do this. I love doing this, and have done that my whole life, and haven't really, I mean, I like writing and I have written some stuff, but I've never really shared it. And, about a year ago, my mom passed away, and, this might go a little deeper than you want to go, but
we like going deep.
Okay, good. So, I've lost a lot of people in my life. Like, my best friend died when we were 30, and she was my best friend from high school. And, I feel like there's been so much grief that I've had that I've just kind of pushed aside. Like, I was 30 and I was working in DC, and I didn't have time. I didn't have time to grieve, and then a couple years later, my dad passed away, and I was pregnant with my second child, and I had a toddler, and I don't have time for that, and then I've lost friends, my friend Bo, my friend Elaine, and I feel like whatever stage I was in my life, I was like just pushing aside. And then my mom died, and I feel like, honestly, the universe was like, okay, we've waited long enough. Like, it's your turn. And I think I was at a place in my life where I had the capacity to really like engage with feelings. And this thing started happening to me. I started waking up at like 4:00 in the morning, and just like waking up, like a wide awake at 4:00 in the morning. And honestly, the very first thing that came out of my mouth, like the first thought in my head was, I miss you, Mom. And it was just like, I would say that every morning at 4. And I feel like it was like a prayer, part a plea. in part a way to reorient myself to this life without my mom. And the first things I would try to, the first part of this, I would just be like, all right, I'm going to put a podcast in and fall back to sleep. And that didn't really work. So I just decided, like, I'm being called to do something. So it was, last winter, and we live in the Northeast, and it's dark and cold, and I just needed a place to go. So I would wrap myself up, and there's this, we have a deck, and we have this swing underneath the deck that looks out onto my backyard, and I just wrap myself up in like hats and coats and blankets, and I would sit out there, and I would be like, what I would say to like the grief, like, what do you want me to know? Like, what do you want me to feel? What do you want me to experience? And I was so blown away by just giving this grief space that, like, I mean, I used to think grief was one thing, like it was sort of the sadness in an absence, right? And it's not. It's so much more than that. Grief is, it's a million different feelings. It is pride, it is anger, it is sadness, it is regret, there's joyful parts of it, there's gratitude, there's all of this stuff. And I just started giving myself space, and I started writing more, and I started reading, I started doing all of these things. And then a couple months later, a friend of mine, I'm getting back to your question, Matt,
this is amazing.
No,
Go.
A friend of mine said, she runs like a philanthropic group for women leaders, and she said, I'd love for you to write something for Mother's Day. And I was like, oh, can I do this? And I sort of sat down, and I wrote about one of those mornings I woke up, and I had this memory of my mom and me alone. And, again, going back to the 8, that never happened. Like, but I had this such a clear memory of, like, it was right before I started school, but everybody else was in school. So the 7 others were in school. I have a memory of the 7 lined up lunch bags, and one by one they were going, and breakfast was over. And my mom said to me, let's just go back to bed for an hour. And we like snuggled in bed together. And she said to me, I love you, Margaret. And I said, I love you around the whole block. And like, it was the truest words I had ever spoken, right? And then I started exploring that, like, now in her loss, in this grief, she and I are alone together again for the first time ever. And this grief has kind of given me an opportunity to develop a different kind of relationship with my mom, one that I didn't want, but one that I have now. And there's parts of it that are beautiful and like just lovely. So I wrote a story about that, and I called it Alone and Together. And the woman, I sent it to her, and she called me and she said, would you read this at our meeting, and could we publish it? And I was like, oh, okay. And she did. And I got so much feedback from people like, that's how I feel. And I lost my mom too. And I lost my dad a couple months ago. And thank you for writing that. And you giving me hope. And, and I'm going to find a porch swing and, stuff like that. And it took this really solitary thing of writing and made a community. And I just was like, wow, I wonder if that's something that like I would enjoy doing. So I just started writing. These. I'm like more of an essayist, so I write little short kind of things about stuff that is on my heart, or something I question, or something I see that I want to explore a little bit more. And I just started writing these essays, and I have gotten this like unbelievable response from people, and this community of people that, I mean, every time I write something, like, I'll get somebody to reach out to me and like, I feel like you wrote that for me. And it's just such an incredible feeling and such an amazing thing for me. So I don't know where it's going. I don't know why I do it. I just do it, and I love it, and I didn't expect to love it, and I did not expect for it to create this community of people. And I write about everything. I don't just write about grief. I write about like my kids getting older and going to college and wanting to enjoy like this period in my life. And I write about, something that I see that I'm like, one story I wrote was about my dog is super weird, Phil. And I like often say he's like on the spectrum and just a strange, strange dog. He's like, my husband and kids went away for a couple days and they took the dog and I missed them terribly. And I was so excited to see them. And this dog, who I have raised from a puppy and have done everything for this dog, I was so excited to see him. He like wagged his tail once, walked by me. But then he came and lodged himself under my desk. He is almost always under my desk. And I looked at him one day under my desk and it's crowded under there. I don't want him under there, but he's under there. And I was like, I looked at him and I was like, you're a jerk. And then I thought to myself, is he really a jerk? Right. So then because some of what I write is like to challenge a thought that I have. I'm like, is he really a jerk? And then I started writing about it and I was like, this dog could be anywhere in this house. He could be sunning himself on the deck. He could be underneath the messiest eaters on the planet. You know, he could be anywhere, but he is 3 flights up, lodged himself under my desk. Like, that's love, right? Like, his love is presence. And then I started thinking about other people in my life and how they express love. And it might not be in this perfect prose or this beautiful package, but like, it's love, right? So this one little thing of me looking at the dog thinking you're a jerk turned into this like exploration of people's love language and an appreciation for it. And so like that's basic, like that to me in a nutshell is what writing has done for me. It allows me to go from one place to a completely different place in the span of a page, you know? And so I've just really loved it. Like I've enjoyed every second of it. I will tell you, like to answer an original question, it's a very, very vulnerable thing though. It is so much easier, like you said, Matt, to write for somebody else. It is like being behind somebody else's name is like, I could write all day under that. But like as soon as you put your name to it and hit publish, you're just like, oh, you know, but I feel like without the risk, you don't get the reward. And the reward is just this connection with people. And I'll take that risk.
Yeah, absolutely. We always joke it's kind of hard to take your own medicine. I mean, we're always telling clients and other people giving advice, you know, it's
Release
like,
your expectation.
Be vulnerable.
Just do it. Be vulnerable. And then, like you said, you hit record or you send something out and it's just lonely you and your name and not even your title. Matt and I talked about that. Just there's things where I'm like, I don't understand. Like I've done this thing. And he's like, yeah, but you were the title or you were part of an administration or you had, even if it felt like a fig leaf, you still had the ability to create some distance between who you are and what you care about in that role. So if you failed, it was potentially the role or there was a place for the discomfort and maybe even the blame a little bit to flow versus, ooh, they didn't like me.
Yes.
They didn't like my writing.
And some people won't. And that's the thing that you have to like sort of steel yourself for. And the way that I've done that for myself is, I mean, I've had really like people close to me, like, you know, be like, it's just not my cup of tea. Like the way I write, you know, and I mean, I'm an emotional writer, right? Like I write about things that are deeply personal and some people don't like that. And, what I have said to myself over and over, it still hurts, but what I have said to myself over and over is like Bach and Johnny Cash were both musicians, right? Like,
That's true.
So there's this like, I'm someplace on there, right? Like I might not be the kind of writer that you like, but I'm still a writer that some people will respond to. And I just have to kind of steel myself in that, but it's hard.
Yeah. And as you said, what's enabled you to connect with people is that authenticity. So that's the trade-off is if you were trying to write for everyone, you wouldn't land with the people that really needed to hear what you wrote and needed to see themselves in someone else to not feel alone in their grief or their hatred of their dog. Like when you're like, you know, just when you said that, like you have a weird dog. I'm like, we have a weird dog. Okay. I'm glad we're not the only people. Cause we're like, did we make the dog weird? Like what happened? I love it. So where, you know, in terms of people being able to find you, I mean, we just said like, oh, it's vulnerable to put your name out there, but where do you write? Are you looking to expand into other outlets? Where can people find you?
So right now I write on Substack, just at Margaret Aitken is my Substack page. I just started doing it in May, so it's only been a couple months, and I'm kind of just feeling my way around and trying to figure out like what I'm doing with it. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it eventually. Like, some people are like, turn it into a book, and I'm not really sure. I'm just sort of playing around with it right now. I feel really fortunate when people read it. I have like and it's a small number, 180 or so subscribers and then more followers, but I don't know. I don't really know what I'm going to do. I really, really enjoy it. It's a great creative outlet for me. And like I said, there's two really great benefits. Like one, it always takes me to another place. I literally always start here and I end up here. And not a lot of things do that for you in your life. Like it forces me to change my perspective, just the act of writing. And then the second thing is, it's just really been this lovely bridge. Like you guys know, writing is a solitary act. For me, it is at least. I sit at my computer, I have a thought. It's like, it's just me and the computer. But putting it out there, like two of my parents' neighbors are subscribers, like two sets. And I literally get like text messages from Mrs. Monagle, who was like down the street, and it's just such a beautiful thing that I have, like, it has created this community. Like people from high school that I haven't spoken to for years are like, I'm so enjoying this, and I read the last thing and it was so great and it made me remember something that happened to me, and it just sparks this kind of conversation. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm just really enjoying it.
We are too.
We love it so
thank
much.
you.
It's so true. Like you said, you'll write something and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like she took a page out of my diary, but it sounds way better the way she wrote it. It's like if my thought was like fully formed and polished, I hope it would sound like this, but it is incredibly, I mean, you just have a beautiful depth and humanity to your writing that really doesn't seek to be, I don't want to say because it's beautifully polished, but it just feels raw and real. And especially in the world that we live in now, I think just by growing up in this country, there is a lot of grief. There's a lot of things that happen here that are wonderful, but are also really hard. And you have just an exceptional way of giving voice and visibility to it in a way that it does bridge, like the grief bridges not just the loss of people, but just the loss of identity. And or again, when you're talking about your dog or your kids, the way you write, you don't necessarily need to have had that explicit exact experience of kids to see your own life reflected back in your words. And it really is incredible.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm going to rub it in.
Well, we love it, and we're really, really appreciative that you could join us. And this was such a fun conversation. We hope to have you back.
Yeah. Well, let's see how this one does first. Let's just throw this test balloon out there.
No expectations.
Look, I think the thing is, like, we love it, so we're happy to continue doing stuff that we love, which is similar to the writing thing. It's just focusing on. We love doing this and having these great conversations. So we are happy to have you back, and
thank you.
Really enjoyed this conversation, and really
Me too.
Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys
Margaret.
so much. Thank you. Big fans. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.